let's look at, environmental toxins. I've heard that 80,000, toxins have been introduced in the last 80 years. What are the big things that people should be just aware of to, I think the average woman puts 196 chemicals on her face by 9 o'clock in the morning. So just name some things. I think avoidance is difficult, and then we'll get into the specifics of, and I don't really like the word detox, but it's because it's overused, but I think the ways that people can get rid of these toxins.
Yeah, so the list is pretty long. It's kind of an alphabet list. Some of the easiest ways to think about it are some of these chemicals are persistent, and then some are not persistent when we avoid them. So, of the ones that are persistent, we can talk about toxic metals. I don't use the term heavy metals anymore because some of the toxic metals are not heavy. But the big players are lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. And then I can go into those in more detail, but those are the ones that we focus on the most. Of course, there are other metals that are up and coming and equally causing problems. In terms of other persistent ones, flame retardants are some of the biggest problems. And those are very difficult to avoid. In California, we put flame retardants in our mattresses. You cannot purchase a mattress without flame retardant in it unless you have a doctor's note, and then you're having a custom mattress made, which can get very expensive. And then there are things like PCBs and the older pesticides like DDT. Those have been banned for use in the United States, at least since the 70s, but they're still in the environment. And they tend to accumulate in animal products, fatty animal products, things like butter actually has some of the highest sources of PCBs and those older pesticides like DDT. And we can't really test for them anymore. At one point, we could test for the presence of these things. I think Genova Diagnostics had an environmental toxicant panel that had that in there. We used to be able to do fat biopsies to identify these things. But we don't have any way to test for these at this point in time. And then things like glyphosate. Would be more persistent. I'm sure there are other ones, but I'll move on. Now, on the non-persistent side, most of the pesticides that are used today are not persistent. So if you eat organic and you go from eating a conventional diet to an organic diet, within days, you are no longer being exposed to organophosphate pesticides. Hooray, that's great, right? So eating organic is something that people understand, and we can limit our pesticide exposures. In terms of some of the other things you mentioned, makeup and personal care products, those chemicals are parabens and phthalates, PHTH phthalates. And those are your plastics. They also tend to be fragrances. So phthalates are fragrances. And in a lot of the personal care products, the manufacturers are not required to put adequate labels on them. So if something says fragrance, you know it's not going to be great. Fortunately, there are a lot of resources these days for being able to identify which personal care products are better than others. EWG, the Environmental Working Group, has a skin deep database, which is reasonable. There's a couple of apps on the phones that people can use where you can scan the barcode of a product. And then there are a lot more products out there available that may not be in the large databases that are, mom and pop type manufacturing companies that are still up and coming, and they might be very clean products. And then let's talk about plastics. So plastics, we all know what plastic is. Unfortunately, when plastic breaks down into smaller particles, you get microplastics and nanoplastics. Those microplastics and nanoplastics can go all throughout the body. And there really aren't good ways at this moment in time to detox plastic. And then plastics are often also combined with other chemicals. So things that make plastic hard also will have the bisphenols, the BPA, BPS, BPF, which are, although not persistent, very ubiquitous, right? We're exposed to these all the time. They're in the lining of cans, they're on receipt paper, they're kind of everywhere.
Mm.
And then the phthalates, the softer plastics, they're in our water bottles. I mean, they're in our personal care products, as I mentioned. So, but you could even get flame retardants in the plastics. You can get heavy metals in the plastics. And so plastics are a huge, huge problem, and avoidance really is key. Drink out of glass and steel. Don't heat your food in plastic. I mean, really, we should be focusing very aggressively at avoiding plastic as much as possible, not just for our own health, but for the health of the planet.